Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about how if you're either new in the area that you're trying to get teaching work in, or if you're just new to being a music teacher, period, good question is, how do you get work? So we're going to talk about subbing today, which is, I think, the easiest way to get your foot in the door. I've done a lot of it. I still do it, not anywhere near as often, because I'm at the store that I teach at, which is Guitar Center Stevenson Ranch in Valencia, Santa Clarita, Newhall, same area, 25 miles north of LA off the 5. I'm the most booked instructor there, or at least I was before the COVID-19 thing. I imagine that'll go back up once I get back to work, but it's definitely been a bit of a change. But either way, before I was the most booked instructor there, I was just taking as much sub work as I possibly could get. And I also was, through one of the teachers there, I got a subbing gig at another music school in town about 10 miles from there. And I've had a few other independent teaching jobs in the last 6 years, but that's been my main gig at Guitar Center. But you're always looking for more work because you're also in the position of work is never guaranteed as a musician or any kind of artistic individual. So you always want to make sure when the work is there, take it. So the first thing you want to do as a substitute teacher is just let them know you're available to sub. So a lot of these places, you're going to be applying to mom and pop stores, independent music stores, independent music schools, and then places like Guitar Center or Sam Ash even that have, private lessons and music programs. And you'll probably fill out an application or have some sort of an interview, almost certainly. Like with Guitar Center, you have to do it online through the application process. I don't think anybody applies in person to most places anymore, unless it's like a mom and pop store. But even sometimes then you may do it online. It just depends on how they go about it. But you need to make yourself available. So that's oftentimes the toughest part, because if you're busting ass to make a living because you just have to survive, you may not have the availability, but be available as much as you possibly can, because you can get a lot of students that way, or at least you can supplement whatever income you have until you can make more money as a teacher. And hopefully, if you're wanting to do this full-time or for your only source of income, then it's just good to build it up a little bit at a time. It takes a while, but it can definitely be lucrative. That's how I went about it. There was a guy at the store that was always gone because he was always doing last-minute auditions and gigs, and he would hit me up the day of or the day before, wanting to know if I could sub, and I always said yes. And eventually it got to where he was so unreliable that they canned him and gave him all the students that he had to me and one of the other teachers there, because he actually was a real pain in our ass and was not professional with his conduct of himself. So it worked in our favor, but it took a little while for that to transpire. But it's definitely something you want to keep in mind. So that won't necessarily happen for you, but just the fact that you're available to take the work is the first thing, because they need to know that they can rely on you. The second thing you want to be sure of when you do sub is that you are prepared as much as you can be. Sometimes you don't have any heads up as to what the students are working on. You might sub for 2 students, you might have a full day of 6 to 8 to 10 students. If you have between 6 and 7 students, that's considered a pretty full day. Because you can have 3 students that are an hour and have 4 that are half hour. But if it's any more than 5 or 6, that's pretty good. So it needs to be a decent amount for you to take the day. But even if you're looking for work enough, if it's 1 or 2 students just to get your foot in the door and you can do it, take it anyway, because it's going to make you look good and know that they can rely on you to call you again. Sometimes you're going to get an email, or the instructor will have specific notes for what the students are working on. Not always. It's pretty rare that I get that, but most of the time the students will know what they've been working on, because they have books or charts or whatever their main instructor has been writing out for them. I'm good at winging it because I've just been teaching so long. I can pick up on whatever they're working on or give them something that they can work on that they're happy with. It's not difficult for me at all, but sometimes they're working on something really specific and you want to know for sure. But that comes down to another lesson topic of what to do when the student isn't sure what they're working on or how to approach that. You don't want to sit there and ask them questions for 5 minutes and waste a bunch of time in the lesson. You want to get that pinpointed pretty quick so you can get them learning something. So the other thing about that is that you want to make sure that the students, they don't have to love you, but you want to make sure that they like you enough to feel like that they got a quality lesson for the day. So just be yourself. You're going to have a different teaching style than every other teacher, and just accommodate them the best you can. Be happy to be there, be cool, be patient, just like we talked about in the last video, and they'll speak well of you, or at least they should. Now, the one thing that you really do have to be, I keep saying the one thing, I'm just adding to it as I go, so pardon me if I repeat myself, but you have to be careful about this, and there's nothing you can do about this, but people get really attached to their music teachers, to their teachers, period. But with something as personal as the one-on-one music thing, you're going to be met with some animosity at some point, usually by an angry parent who was not informed of them having a sub for the day. The student usually doesn't get irritated with it. You might have a kid that's a little timid because it's a new person that they weren't expecting, so they might be a little shy. They might not like it. I've had adults get pissed off at me for being the sub. They literally will walk in the store and say, "Oh, I didn't know I had a sub today, so I don't want to do my lesson," and look at me and say, "Nothing personal," and walk out. And so it's like, okay, thanks, man, because you're just the guy who took the work when it was offered. So you're innocent because you're just doing what you're supposed to do. But you do have to watch out for that, and guarantee if you work in a music school or a store or any kind of environment where somebody else books the lessons for you, you're gonna run into that as a sub sometime. I would bet money on it. It's not a super common thing, but the bottom line is that a sub is provided when the main teacher isn't there so that they can still retain their lesson, and the store is not obligated to tell them about it because that's protocol. And they will sign an agreement that has all the policies and procedures, and that's in there, but a lot of people don't read it. They know they're signing an agreement, they sign the contract, they pay their payment, and they don't actually read the fine print or all the parameters of that. So that's on them, but it's something you will deal with. You just have to approach it professionally and tell them, hey, they needed a sub, I wanted to work, I stepped up, they said, okay, here's the students, here's what day you need to be here, you confirm it with whoever books the lessons, and you're good to go. I've had parents and people ask me, well, why isn't Brian here today? And I've told them a couple of times that, well, it's honestly none of my business why Brian isn't here. I don't know. He just needed a day off. So, and you have to be cool about it, but it's a little irritating. It'll piss you off sometimes, believe me, because it's pissed me off. I flat out wanted to slap one of the mothers a while back because she just looked at me and she said, I was expecting the name of the teacher to be here, and I'd subbed for him several other times. So it wasn't a new experience. That mother was the biggest pain in the ass that the store I've ever dealt with. That's another lesson topic also for a future clip. But to shorten this part of the video up, that's something you want to be well aware of because it will happen to you at some point. And there's nothing you can do. Just be as cool as you can. If you have a parent who royally pisses you off, and it'll happen. Hopefully not often. Most of the parents, like all the parents I deal with right now are just wonderful, but sometime it'll happen. Talk to your store manager, whoever books the lessons, and give them a heads up. It's never you, it's always them. You're just doing your job, but you can't please everybody, and people are just assholes sometimes, you know. It's a lot of the time, but either way. So we've covered being available and making yourself look good, be aware of the potential and almost guaranteed at some point the disgruntledness of a student or parent who is not happy with them having a sub, and make sure that whoever you're subbing for knows when you're available so they can call you. And if you do it often enough in the same place or number of places, because you can have multiple teaching jobs. I had 4 teaching jobs at one point. 2 mom and pop stores, Guitar Center, and then through a private teaching service where I drove to clients' homes. but just knowing the availability of when you're available so they can book you in any one of those locations, eventually you can get a lot more work out of that. And that's how you're going to be able to get work regularly at first, especially if the people who are teaching at whatever environment you're in are gigging or doing studio work or touring, and they're gone a lot of the time. Those are the people you want to sub for, because they usually have a decent amount of students. So that's all for this lesson. Thanks for tuning in, and please hit the subscribe button, and we will see you for the next clip. Rock on.